Bakugo and Deku's relationship this chapter, in my opinion, had some quite interesting parts that I want to discuss or talk about. But what I also want to talk about is, of course, at the very ending when we saw All For One having this little comment about One For All's original user, you know, the one that is All For One's brother, because it is something that could really have some heavy connections to Deku later on in My Hero Academia that we just don't know about. So I will really want to get into these kind of things, starting with the whole thing with Bakugo and Deku though, because it is something that I personally found to be very interesting. It is the interactions that we see between them when Bakugo is just very adamantly trying to, you know, shove it in Deku's face that he has progressed even further than he has, that he is the better one out of the two, really displaying that Bakugo has a very strong competitive nature with Deku that we haven't really seen before. Before he was mostly as looking down on him, not really viewing him as a threat at all, but the fact that he is trying so hard to really tell Deku that he is the stronger, that he's the better, just proves to you that Bakugo, he understands that Deku is someone that you need to look out for. He is someone that you gotta keep on training in order to stay ahead of at this point in the game, because at this point in the game he is actually about equal to Bakugo in terms of quirk potency in a way. I mean, if you look at it like this, Bakugo is likely the more skilled one because he's had maybe 10 years of training, whereas Deku's had maybe like what, 1 year of training. So it's really not the skill level that is equal, but rather the powers of their quirks in a way. And the fact that Deku has a much stronger quirk in itself obviously gives him a little bit of an edge in a way, but at the same time Bakugo's skill really balances that out. So you definitely do see that they are extremely close in terms of overall capability. So I'm really happy, as I said, that Bakugo was really showing this competitive nature with Deku in a way that we haven't really seen before, at least. And I really do hope that that actually, you know, obviously develops further as the story moves on, and eventually he'll probably stop or at least tone down the insulting nature towards Deku, because at the end of the day, you know, he doesn't really use that sort of manner against most people. I mean, there are a few others, of course, like the ones that he would consider to be the more insignificant in the class, but then you have people like Kirishima, where you don't really see that kind of nature as often because they are technically friends. And Bakugo and Deku used to be friends as well, so I'm really expecting to see that sort of nature to return at some point. And I think this is a good step in that direction. I believe that as rivals, that will really help Bakugo and Deku to get closer back together as they once were as children before their quirks had developed and all that. Because at that point, they weren't really on bad terms with each other. Granted, Deku was following around Bakugo a lot, even, you know, at an early age, but Bakugo didn't really have anything that Deku didn't. Now, the next thing that I want to talk about is Class 1B, because we did see some curiously interesting stuff about Monoma in this chapter. Well, I did. I mean, I don't know if anyone else really cares or picked up on it, but it is the way that Monoma treats everyone a bit different as well, you know. When you're looking at how he treats the people in Class 1A, he doesn't really show any kind of respect towards them. He considers Class 1B to be vastly superior in every way, and then when he talks to people from his own class, you see an extremely different personality. You see a very calm, you see a very collected Monoma, and that is something that I don't really think we see all too often. And in this chapter we got to see that towards Shinso, who is a neutral party. You know, he could either end up in Class 1B, could end up in Class 1A whenever he enters the hero course. We don't really know what class he will belong to. All we know is that he has the potential to reaching the hero course, of course. And seeing Monoma really act like that towards someone that isn't part of his gang, so to speak, that is something that I really liked seeing, because it shows us that there is more to Monoma than the outgoing, really obnoxious character that we're so used to seeing, because that is the one that people hate a lot. But if this other version of Monoma, this really nice Monoma, so to speak, can actually be shown a lot more, I think he can actually be appreciated more as a character, and I think that may be well needed, because right now Monoma is a character that isn't, as I said, very well received with a lot of people. Me personally, I do like Monoma. I think he's a hilarious character. I believe he is really Class 1B's equivalent to Mineta, only not really on the perverted side, rather the opposite. In fact, he doesn't really seem to care that much about women at all. All he cares about is making fun of Class 1A and making them really annoyed and angry at him. But speaking to Shinso, we saw how he was really explaining to him that obviously his quirk should not be relied on too much, because even he can make mistakes and, you know, things could go wrong, and if they rely on one thing too much, then that is going to become a liability. And that is something that I absolutely loved hearing from someone like Monoma. You know, we see that he is actually a very smart guy. He's not as stupid as he makes us believe he is. Also, to do with Class 1B, not so much Monoma though, it was more about the other characters, like the poltergeist girl. I cannot remember her name now, but she made a comment regarding Deku, which is that she really doesn't like how strong he might be, and the fact that he could have an even greater agility than Bakugo did. And that is something that really either frightens her or puts her on edge on some way, and that really shows us that Class 1B is actually starting to recognize even Deku as a serious threat, because right now all we've seen is people really highlighting Todoroki or Bakugo, you know, when looking at people that aren't from Class 1A. You know, Deku hasn't really been someone, at least not too often, that you really hear people talk about and really recognize as a really strong person or a strong hero. But the fact that he was brought up in this match, you know, as potentially the strongest member of his team and someone that should be highly prioritized as stated by Shinso. Now that is something that has me quite intrigued and quite possibly even hyped, because we might see a situation where everyone is just gonna target Deku in this match, and we're not really gonna see Class 1B trying to focus on the other members of his team. You know, we're not really gonna see them focus on Ochako, Mineta, Mina. We're really gonna see them gravitate towards Deku and try to really cancel him out as quick as possible, because obviously they believe that, you know, bringing down the one that's gonna cause the most trouble is the easiest approach in a situation like this. Of course, if I were to have an opinion on that, I would say that, you know, sure, you should probably focus on the one strongest, but you should definitely not ignore the supporting characters, as they would put it in this case, because that's really how they're reviewing Class 1A's team. You know, they're considering Deku to be a really strong main sort of threat, and the others aren't really that great of a concern, but it's still a team effort. And, you know, one mistake in Class 1B can be packing their bags, so to speak. I mean, obviously, Shinso is someone that I'm really having my eyes on, because he is someone with a really potentially strong quirk, even though, you know, they may know about the brainwashing quirk and all. The fact that he has this device that allows him to, you know, change his voice around makes it really difficult for anyone to really fight him properly, because Deku could be hearing Ochako's voice, and, you know, is he gonna respond to that or is he not gonna respond to that? Because it could mean the difference between, oh, I get brainwashed or I don't. So either they're gonna have to come up with a different way of really communicating, or they're gonna have to risk it a lot in this match, because Shinso is just such a fearful threat on that front. You know, the fact that he can actually almost entirely halt the opposing team's communications because they don't want to risk being brainwashed. Okay, so moving on to the whole thing with All For One we got in this chapter, when we saw All Might getting a call from Gran Torino, and obviously he probably explains the situation, how All For One has been moving around and all of that kind of stuff. But what I found really interesting was obviously the comment that All For One was giving regarding the original One For All user, when he said that he could hear the voice of his younger brother. Now this is something that could be either a really cryptic message, or it could be something that's a lot more literal that we may think it is. Because when you look at it like this, Deku was having this dream which sort of made him in touch with the original One For All user, which could actually have some connection to what All For One is talking about. Now, whether it is, I don't know. I mean, there's no way All For One could possibly know what dream Deku was having, because there's no connection between the two of them, at least not as far as we know, and All For One is way too far away from him. He's so far away from Deku at this time. You know, he's in prison, like underground. He is sealed away from civilization essentially, so obviously he's not aware of the dream that Deku's had probably, but there could be something else that really touches on One For All that All For One can sense, especially since there was another mention of Gigantomachia in this chapter. Now that is of course the big ass motherfucking monster that, you know, took a chunk out of a mountain when Gran Torino was capturing Kurogiri, because I mean that guy was a monster. Like, there's no other way to describe it. That amount of physical force was unbelievably strong. You'd really need a top end hero to even touch on that. Like, if you have anything less, just run basically. And that character, like, I'm not saying any factual much right now. All I'm gonna do now is speculate, but what if that Gigantomachia has some connection to the original One for All user? Because I find it so strange that he would be brought up around the same time as All for One is having a tingling sensation about the voice of his younger brother, you know what I mean? Like, it feels a bit too convenient, but at the end of the day, it could be a very cryptic message. He might just have dreamt about his younger brother. Like, it could be something that's really just there to put us off, you know, to get us on edge, but at the end of the day, it's not gonna be anything huge, you know? It's not gonna be anything that has a connection to anything, but it makes us believe that there is. Kind of like how when Yuga was thought to be the traitor because he was looking over Deku in his sleep, but it turns out, you know, there was nothing ominous about that at all. You know, Yuga was just delivering a message to Deku in a way, you know, he wanted Deku to understand that they have some similar natures and all of that. So it wasn't anything bad at all happening. He was just a red herring at the end of the day, and, you know, this could be a similar case. Not necessarily a red herring because we don't really have any suspects of anything, but what he said could just be something that's not really worth looking too much into. But, you know, if you want to make your own theories, that's absolutely fine. So I certainly hope that goes somewhere, but as I've said, obviously it could be nothing, but I kind of hope it is something, because this series, you know, My Hero Academia, it needs to step up its game, because quite recently, around the time when the Pro Hero arc started, it said that the story is entering its second phase, which is gonna be a lot more serious. You know, it's gonna be like a level above what we've been seeing previously, so I'm really expecting to see a lot of arcs where, you know, we're gonna see some big action going on. Even though My Hero Academia isn't really as much of a battle shonen as maybe Black Clover is, but still, like, the fact that we've gotten that promise that it's hitting its second phase, a much more action-packed and more serious phase. I mean, it is something that, you know, despite what you may think of My Hero Academia's genres, you know, if Horikoshi has said that this is how it's going to be, I expect it to be like that. So after this arc, I'm really having some high expectations, just saying. Anyway, with that said, I'm gonna end this review here, so I'd like to know what you think down below in the comments, what you thought about this chapter, My Hero Academia chapter 209. And as always, if you did, be sure to Detroit smash that like button if you enjoyed, and subscribe if you haven't done so already. This has been Chaotic Plus, and remember everybody, Toga is waifu, Toga is Laifu.